What were some of the worst experiences you have had while working in the fast food industry? I worked at Starbucks and a woman ordered her coffee at 140 degrees in the drive-thru. She walks back in the cafe after pulling out and complains that her coffee was 139 degrees because she has a thermometer in her car and she demands it be remade. I laughed at her and asked if she was joking and she demanded to see my manager. My manager remade it, but I didn't get in any trouble. She was ridiculous, but Starbucks policy is to remake anything if a customer asks for it. Another time there was a long wait during rush hour in the morning and I apologized to a guy that it was taking a long time to get his white mocha to him. He glared at me and yelled, "You don't really mean you're sorry," and refused to be cordial. He continued to look at me with disdain for the next few minutes. It made me super sad at the time. I really was sorry. Asshole. I learned not to be affected by shitty people so much as I got older. Literally had a 17-year-old kid die in my arms. I was 19 and working at KFC in a bit of a rough area. It was a quiet day shift, so there were only 3 staff and no customers in the store at the time. A young couple, who looked pretty ducked up, walked in and went straight to the bathrooms. After some time, the girl came out screaming for help. She said her boyfriend had gone into the bathroom to use heroin and he was not responding and was inside the locked men's room. My manager called an ambulance while I tried to get the door up, couldn't kick it down like Chuck Norris. So I went and grabbed some tools and finally got it up, found the kid blue and cold on the floor. His pulse was faint. There was a syringe next to him. He had blood in his mouth, so I couldn't make mouth-to-mouth contact and started administering chest compressions. The whole time his girlfriend was screaming at me to save him. I feel like I could sense the moment he had passed. The ambulance came within a few minutes, but there was nothing they could do. His mother came a few days later to apologize and thank us for trying to save him. There was some police questioning and plenty of nightmares. It was been about 17 years and I still think about it oft. I was working at a pub shortly after college. During the evenings, things would always get pretty stressful and hectic. People would be snapping at each other or saying mean things or arguing or whatever. Pretty standard stuff in a high stress situation like that. One day, though, in the middle of dinner, the other cook, my immediate manager, but not the restaurant manager, apparently just had a bad night. He'd been getting progressively more agitated all night, not with me, luckily. Suddenly, a waitress came back and complained that one of her tables was complaining because the food was cold. First, the manager responded by telling her that if she'd come get her orders when they were done, they wouldn't be cold. But when she made some comment back, he snapped. He picked up a hot pan from the stove, and I was terrified for a second that he was going to throw it at her. Instead, he swung it as hard as he could at the entire stack of clean plates and knocked almost all of them off the table, shattering them on the floor. Then he literally tore off his apron and stormed out, but not before knocking a tray full out of another waitress's hands. Weirdly enough, the store manager was going to let him keep his job if he'd admit being out of line. She brought him in during lunch the next day to talk to him, and instead of apologizing, he smashed a coffee cup against the wall and left. All told, it was probably for the best. Worked at Wendy's for 2 weeks. Wasn't bad until someone spread sheet all over the men's restroom and they wanted me to clean it up. It was on the ceiling, toilet, all the walls. Like someone had a poop confetti bomb. Just rubber gloves, no mask. I said duck it and quit. I was a waitress at a pizza place and an older man and woman flagged me over and they just start yelling at me, going on and on that they found metal in their food. And she's showing me and yelling and I'm trying to apologize and saying we can make you a new pizza. I'm sorry, I have no idea where it came from. After several minutes of yelling, the man gets quiet and he goes, "Oh, I lost a filling." Then they tried to be all nice and laugh it off. I just wanted to say screw you for treating me like crap. This actually happened a couple of days ago. I supervise at a BBQ restaurant and the other day I had an employee get sick while on his lunch in the break room. I'm going over timesheets and out of the corner of my eye I see him run to the trash can with what looked like some sort of brown liquid in his hands and casually toss it in. I'm under the assumption that he maybe spilled his lunch in the break room. and was cleaning it up. I go to investigate the situation, only to hear a loud lurch followed by a loud splat onto the floor. I find said employee holding an impressive amount of vomit in his hands, and all over the break room is contoured till a scented bile. I ask if he's okay and send him to first aid to make sure he's not dying. I glove up and begin the process of clean the chunky mess that he managed to spread across the break room and doors. I also find a nice trail of vomit leading to the trash can, and despite his best efforts, only managed to get his vomit onto the side of the trash can. I just about finished cleaning the vomit and the employee comes back saying he usually feels better after a puke a lot. I'm getting ready to send him home when, surprise, he decided he wasn't done puking. He looks me in the eyes and says, I think I need a trash can. Vomits all over the just mopped and sanitized floor. He then runs to the only hand washing sink and decided it would be great to puke in there. I send him home and spend the rest of my shift mopping and scooping chunks of hot water and vomit from a terribly clogged sink. Hey, I wanted to be the boss, right? I worked at McDonald's part-time while I was in college. One day, I was working the drive-thru and this guy ordered a lot of drinks. One of them was low on soda syrup, but instead of just telling me about it like a rational person, so I could give him a replacement drink, he threw the extra large drink at me. Of course the lid came off, and I was soaking wet. The manager, who was actually pretty good as far as fast food managers go, saw this happy took off running into the parking lot, flagged down the driver before he could leave, and told him to never come back. Then he came back in, found me a dry uniform shirt, and let me have a few minutes on the clock to sit in the break room and calm down. Naked people while delivering pizza. Sounds sexy in the pronos, tends to be horrifying in real life. McD's was my first job at 16-year, and I was hired just prior to the Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys. Lines out the door, crazy women demanding we get them a certain toy, impatient and cheaty people. People would say degrading shit like mentioning I was working for minimum wage if they felt I wasn't working fast enough. People suck. On a related note, my mom used to collect them. There was a line for a store that sold the Beanie Babies like it was Black Friday or some shit. A guy got pissed at my mom because she saw him cut in line and she wasn't having it. Other people there supported my mom in what became an argument. The guy threatened my mom, alluding to him killing her. Dude leaves and my mom returns to a car that's been keyed to shit. It's a smaller town, but I was surprised to see the incident in the local paper. Imga. Com8 HTDVGJ. I worked at a popular Canadian coffee franchise almost 10 years ago. One day, a drive-thru customer had some sort of altercation with a pair of pedestrians who had been walking through the drive-thru. The way I understand it, the customer had almost hit the pedestrians, a man and his mother, and then had started shouting. This is what I heard over the drive-thru headset. You want a face full of Abusive? I'll give ya a face full of Abusive. I had a teenage coworker who believed in Santa. When a mall Santa came into the store, this coworker started looking out the windows for his sleigh. I had a teenage coworker who asked me what's an artsy with total sincerity. When I explained what an artsy was, the follow-up question was, so, do we like them or not like them? I had a customer hurl racial insults at a coworker because the coworker did not butter his bagel in the manner he expected. I had a customer who requested a bagel dripping in butter, noting that she would send it back if there's not enough butter. I buttered until the butter was soaking the paper. She sent it back, quite livid. I put a burger patty worth of butter on the bagel. She opened it again, inspected it, was clearly still not satisfied, and drove away angrily. I was a car hop at Sonic Drive-In through most of high school. I was the only guy that was able to use the roller skates. An extremely creepy old man in a vehicle that might as well have been in a scrapyard called me back to his car after I started to go back inside. Gave me a $15 tip because that as needed a second look. I worked at IKEA in the restaurant, not the main one, but the shitty one at the end. I remember we sold out of pizza and the next one was 6 minutes. We had 6 people ask for pizza and we asked if they were fine with waiting. So we eventually sold out of the pizza that was still in the oven. Well, it's finally ready. People are waiting. They already paid, and my coworker took it out of the oven as another coworker was calling his name from behind him. when he turned his head to see who called the pizza slid off the peel and fell cheese side down, making a huge splat. The sauce went everywhere. It looked like this. http://imga.com0cdeklu GIF, and there was just a collective AHHH from the people who had ordered that pizza. At first I was laughing, because at least it wasn't me, but then we had to process 6 refunds, while the line piled up. I worked at McD's in high school. Some guy got fired, and as a farewell duck he pulled the Ensel, which is a powder fire extinguisher system. The entire kitchen was instantly covered in fine blue powder. It was everywhere and everything. We had to shut the store, and then everyone had to stay till like 3 in the morning to clean. That guy was a dick. When I worked at Subway, this guy asked for sriracha sauce on his sandwich. I put the regular amount on, then he asks for more. I put more on. He asks for more. Eventually, he's screaming at me to put more sriracha on the sandwich, to which I end up emptying out the entire bottle on it. He's still not satisfied, so I have to get more. 1/2 bottle of sriracha later, he says it's enough. Still remember him to this day. I used to work at Sonic. On rainy days, especially when it was pouring, people would intentionally park across the lot, the spare spots that weren't covered by their famous awning, and make the car hops walk the food out there to them. We'd be standing there outside their car window with the food on a tray, waiting for them to roll down their window. They'd take their sweet time getting out their cards or cash, while we were getting drenched. All the while, there were plenty of open spots under the awning, closer to the restaurant, and out of the rain. By the time they took their food from us, they would demand the meal for free, since it was wet. Mind you, not wet enough to give back the food, just wet enough to demand a full refund, while they shoved the offending fries in their mouth. Those people also never tipped. Also, we had people who would make us go back inside and replace their 44-ounce drink 4 and 5 times, even when you insisted it was the right drink. This ain't diet, sir. I poured this drink myself. I can assure you it's diet. I want you to go back in there and do it again, and I better not have to send this back a 3rd time. Edit. Don't feel bad if you didn't know until now that Sonic employees get tip wage. A ton of people have no idea, so they ever tip. That's a known thing when you work there, or at least at my location. Also, you can't tip on a card there, so even if you wanted to, there wouldn't be a way to do it. And cards were 50% of our business. Now they are probably even more. We had a notice board that customers could pin their adverts on. One week we took everyone's stuff off so that we could use it as a memorial for our coworker who had just recently passed away. One customer came in and started going ballistic at us that we took her advert down. She didn't care that it was a memorial. My coworker ended up crying out the back for the rest of her shift. Edit. To clarify, it wasn't the coworker who passed that was crying out back. Worked at Braum's for a bit. Went to hand an elderly lady her ice cream cone. She took it from me, pulled her arm into her car, took a lick, and then dropped the ice cream down her door. I genuinely felt bad for her and offered to give her another one and clean it up if she would pull around. It's 100+ degrees out and I'm in full uniform. I begin wiping the side of her door when she throws a plethora of insults my way. This is why your generation is so messed up. You saw I had braces on my wrist. You knew I had arthritis. You should never have handed me that cone. You should ask if I want a cup instead. You'll probably only ever be a fast food worker. It's people like you that make everyone's life hard. She said a few more things. The heat and moment got the best of me. I threw the dirty napkins in her lap, told her to shut the duck up, reminded her I was doing her a favor and it wasn't my fault, advised her to order correctly, and told her to clean up her own goddamn mess. I walked back inside, explained to my manager what I did, and in comes this lady playing I'm a good sweet Christian and would never disrespect someone card. Manager told her to call corporate, but as he wasn't outside, he couldn't believe what she had to say. Not necessarily fast food, but I used to work in a bakery where our head chef had a reputation of being a great dick. Our nicknames were Stupid Duck and Dumb Duck. We had to work at an insane pace and he acted as if he was God's gift to earth. The one that stuck with me was when I made a customer a sandwich and she requested a side of avocado. Our avocados were not ripe at all. I mean, it was like plastic. I mentioned this to her and she said it was fine. So I sliced it for her and gave it to her. She calls up like an hour later complaining that her avocado was not ripe and she was unhappy. People are stupid.